First of all, it's great to see you. I
You
think
too.
you've rebounded quite a bit from that memorable time where you're going to do the draft lottery. If Costas was just another 20 seconds, if he was just stuck in the tunnel 20 seconds longer,
It
you,
made for a great story. I do know that. The memory I have of that is being seconds away from making my NBC national TV debut, only to have a guy walk in the side door of NBA Entertainment, yell out, "Costas is in the building!" What? We crossed paths on the stairwell, and Bob said, "Ian, you would have done a fine job, I'm sure."
I don't know if you ever tell that story. I think it's just the only time we every time we see each other, every 10
Yeah.
years, that's the story we tell.
Yes.
I'm thrilled to welcome Ian Eagle as my guest today. Ian is the lead play-by-play announcer for CBS and TNT Sports' NCAA tournament coverage, a role in which he has become the signature voice of March Madness. In 1994, he became the play-by-play announcer for the New Jersey Nets, a position he still holds today on the Yes Network, even after the franchise relocated to Brooklyn in 2012. Simply put, when you hear Ian Eagle's voice on a broadcast, you know it's a big game being called by one of the best in the business.
Hmm.
Welcome, Ian.
Dave, it feels like this is your life. Do you have my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Frank, ready to go? We'll have the full retrospective. What I hear after that is, Ian, you're getting old. You're an older person. That's
No.
the reality. No, no, youthful spirit. We both have it.
Listen, I had to cut the his your bio. It just went on for like 2 or 3 pages. That summarized everything. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about, but since March Madness is going to be starting very shortly, and I'm sure you're already prepping for this big tournament run, I thought we just kind of focus the conversation today on the tournament.
Yep.
So, without further ado, my first question is you've been a part of calling so many great games during the tournament. Can you name some of your top favorite games and calls that you've been a part of?
Wow. I've done it since 1998, so that means a lot of games. The way that it's set up, you do four games on the first day. Normally, in broadcasting terms, if somebody came to you as a play-by-play announcer and said, "Hey, look, I know you're doing a game today. We're going to need you to do a second game." And you'd say, "Whoa, whoa, two games? Okay." If they came to you and said, "Hey, we have a third game we need you to do today," you'd say, "Well, no, that's not realistic." And if they say, "Hey, we have four games. You're doing four games today," your first instinct would be, "It's impossible. There's no way. How? There's an avalanche of information. How will I possibly do it?" And I feel like if I followed my own advice every year, I should write myself a note and seal the note. And then the day of the first game, first day of the tournament, open up the sealed envelope, and the note would say, "It's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out." And that's really what it's like when you do the NCAA tournament, because yes, I'd like to say that I'm preparing for all potential 68 teams. There's no way to do that. You have no idea who you're going to draw. You have no idea who's going to be in your region. And it really is cramming for that final exam. And you've got a couple of days to do it. The games that stand out for me, 2010, I did the world feed for the Final Four. So that was really my first taste as a broadcaster of the Final Four. It happened to be one of the greatest games of all time. Duke, Butler, Gordon Hayward, half court shot at the buzzer. If that ball goes in, to me, it ends up being the greatest ending in championship history and the greatest upset combined. That's what was riding on that one attempt by Hayward that nearly went down, but the pulsating vibes of that year, Butler playing in their own backyard in Indianapolis, Duke trying to get back to the mountaintop. You just had the perfect blend of storylines for that championship. And then the games I've done for CBS and Turner through the years, UConn winning the national championship last year, back to back, pretty special. I've had double overtime games, thrillers, Wake Forest, West Virginia, ended up being Chris Paul's last game as a collegiate player, but nobody really remembers that because Kevin Pittsnogle made big play after big play. And Dave, that's the great thing about March is a name like that will live on forever. Chris Paul, Hall of Fame player. He's going to go down as one of the greatest point guards in basketball history. But the memory I have of that game is of a player that didn't have the career that Chris Paul ended up having, but had his moment. And that's what I think this tournament, this event is all about. There is somebody out there right now that I do not know their name. I don't know their background. I don't know anything about them. And I'm going to know everything there is to know about that person because they did something special in March to capture the imagination of the basketball community. And that part makes it so different than any other sporting event.
That's great. That really sums up the excitement of you have to be prepared, but you
Yep.
don't have to be. You can't be 100% prepared because you have
There's
to be
no
able to
way.
do things on the fly there. Are you aware of when, after the fact, some of your calls go viral on social media? For example, last year's Final Four game, Alabama's Grant Nelson's dunk when you said, "We just got the full Nelson." I mean, that's doing a poor imitation of you, but are you aware of some of your calls might go viral?
I notice that my phone lights up like a Christmas tree. That I feel and I can see it as it's happening. I don't know the impact in the moment. After the fact, I'll notice some stories, social media where something catches on. It's funny because the way you approach the job, in my point of view, is you're not doing any of these things so that they could maybe go viral. You're doing it because it's entertaining and it's informative. And sometimes the order in which you have to present the content shifts. If you have a great game, the game takes over. If you have a game that becomes a blowout, then you need to up the entertainment factor because the information starts to whittle away. And that's how I've tried to approach this job for many years. I think because I did Nets games for so many years in relative anonymity, I got to workshop a lot of things. Bill Raftery and I were calling games for 8 years together, and we had some of the most enjoyable back and forths with zero reaction because we just didn't have many viewers. But we did it to amuse ourselves, to amuse the truck, and for the finite number of people that were watching Nets games at the times, I think they felt like they were a part of it. So ironically, many years later, when I get paired with Bill on a national level, it's the same dynamic. It's the same collaboration that we had back then in the 90s. And now here we are in 2025. People are catching on. Oh, these guys really like each other, or they bust each other's chops. You get Grant Hill, you get Tracy Wolfson involved. We genuinely enjoy each other's company. We like to have fun. And sometimes those moments can take on a life of their own online because it's a little snapshot of a game and people can consume it in a different manner. So the call that you just alluded to, the full Nelson, it's a little bit of wordplay. I did not go into that game saying I have to get this in, but it was something marinating in the back of my mind. If he did something really special, be ready, be prepared. That's part of this job is you don't have time to think. You have to react. And there's no backspace button. You don't get to do it again. You don't get to re-rack the tape and let's go with take two. It's one take. And I like that. I like the fact that you're on a tightrope without a protective net. I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. And I think for those who study this and are a student of it in some way, you do everything in your power to be ready for the moment and you try to meet the moment. You can enhance a play or a sequence if you're capable of rising to the occasion and capturing what the essence of that play was. And then sometimes the call gets remembered with the play. Marv Albert, and this is during your tenure at the NBA, a spectacular move by
Right.
Michael Jordan. You remember the play, not just a random Michael Jordan play. You remember the specific play. So there is something very visceral about that. I recognize that pretty early. So the words you choose, the vocabulary that you use, how you use your voice, all of those elements mesh together. And then sometimes you just hit it perfectly. That's the goal. It doesn't happen every time, but every now and again, the perfect storm hits.
Well, we're looking forward to having more of those perfect
Yeah.
storms in this tournament. It's funny when you were describing your early days with the Nets and workshopping your play-by-play. You sound like an actor who's doing a Broadway show. Like one night I'm going to call it this way, one night I'm going to act it this way. I'm going to be excited. So if this whole broadcasting thing didn't work out, I could see you as an actor. It would have been perfect. You've already know how to workshop.
And Dave, my parents came from that end of the business. My parents were both actors, entertainers. My dad was a stand-up comedian, trumpet player, actor. My mother was a singer, actress. So I saw it firsthand. I saw how they prepared. I saw their mindset and approach and their day-to-day lives behind the scenes, and then saw it for real when they went up on stage. Or my dad eventually had a lot of success as a commercial actor. My mom eventually ended up in Las Vegas playing Judy Garland in the show Legends in Concert. And all of those experiences, you don't know it at the time, but as I look back now, I realize how much of a role that played in me just being a fly on the wall, osmosis, and watching it, experiencing it, and processing it in real time as a kid. I'm talking about very vivid memories at the age of 4, 5, 6, how my parents got into the mindset to go do their job on a day-to-day basis. And it certainly planted a seed with me. So maybe I do take a little bit of the theatrical approach. I certainly look at the job as a marriage of preparation and performance. And if one of those areas suffers, it does affect the other part of it. You can prepare, you could have all your notes set up. If you don't perform it well, it doesn't resonate with the viewer or the listener. You could perform at a very high level, and many announcers do. If they get the facts wrong, if they get a name wrong, mispronunciation, a town, some little piece of minutia that people realize, no, that's not right. Well, that affects your performance because you lose credibility. So it's got to be the perfect confluence of the two.
I wanted to find out, what are you using to stay updated on breaking news and developments in college basketball? Like,
Interesting.
what's your go-to source?
Really interesting because when social media started to hit, I was at a place in my career where my employers asked me if I was interested, as opposed to telling me or dictating to me, you must participate. And that's a very nuanced dynamic. If it was a year or two earlier, just based on time accrued and where I was at in the pecking order, I might have been told that, hey, you need to join at the time Twitter or Facebook, whatever your choice is, and we need you to be engaged. But because I had gotten to a high enough level, I was asked if I was interested. And I really thought about it long and hard. And I came to the determination that it would not be good for me to be front and center. I had a lot of jobs, which meant a lot of games and a lot of responsibility and a lot of prep. And I know my personality. If I joined, I would want to be heavily involved and I would post a great deal and I would post my random musings during travel and I would try to be funny and comedic and unique. And I made the decision, a very conscious one, not to participate. I politely said no. I declined to my employers. But that doesn't mean I'm not in that world. I do have a burner account that I use to follow everything that I need to follow to stay up to date. Anyone that says, oh, I don't even look, well, then you're doing yourself a disservice. This is information that's happening very quickly. And sometimes in the middle of a game, you need to disseminate it and not be the one on the outside looking in. If your viewers know things that you don't know, that's a problem. So I do stay on top of it. I do pay attention in game. I do make sure that I'm in the know. I am following the people I need to follow to feel informed. And for now, that means being on X and seeing the constant updates. It can't overwhelm you while you're doing a game. You have enough to worry about, but I do keep an eye on it. And it's something I do check during breaks to make sure that I'm not missing something and make sure that we're covering all the bases. And by the way, if you're a company broadcasting any big event, it would be very important to have someone in the truck also monitoring and making
Mhm.
sure that you've got every angle covered. So that's mostly on X. Instagram, similar situation, little different. The platform presents things in a different manner, and it's a more visual platform, less fact-based. And then randomness can pop up. There certainly are times where I find myself going down a rabbit hole on Reddit because I found a little piece, a little part of a story that I want more information on. The issue is vetting it. You
Mhm.
can't just go with something just because you see it on your phone or on your laptop or on your iPad or your device. We still have a responsibility to get it right. And I'm not one to just flippantly go with something because it's out there. I'll work with our producers, work with our research department to make sure that we are going down the right path and we have the correct information.
Have you ever used a piece of, can you give me an example? Have you ever used a piece of information that you've, during a break that you've seen on X or something from a trusted source
Oh,
that
sure. Yeah, I mean, injury wise, that's the first thing because sometimes a source has more sources than we do in the moment because they're with the team all the time. And they might get something that we now can double check that we weren't on top of. And in game, what's the goal? The goal is to get the right information out there to the most amount of people
Mhm.
possible. What we know has happened with X is your your own biggest advocate. You've got your own setup with your own followers that are waiting for you to share information. So it's been an incredible tool for reporters to connect with their audience and to share information or to be first. As we know, that's become a cottage industry to have the information first, even if it's 45 seconds faster than the person that does your job for another outlet. There is some form of credibility in that. You better be right because speed doesn't count unless you get it correct. But there are plenty of stories that are on social media that now make their way into the mainstream and they germinate in some other fashion. What I found more than ever now, each school, certainly in the big programs, have their own social media workers. So you've got a staff that is now on top of it, and usually a younger person. And then they've got their own content creators. So they're creating content on a daily basis. Every game I do at the collegiate level, certainly professionally, NFL, NBA, I see it all the time. There are cameras around, there's someone filming practice, there's someone filming oftentimes the moments away from the field to get the behind the scenes vibe to give access to their viewers. So what I've seen is some creative stuff that's being piped out there from teams and leagues. They are doing it at a high level, and they often now can spur further ideas for what we're doing on the tournament or in the playoffs, whatever it might be. In my preparation, I try to go as deep as possible, and that will lead you to places, videos, short videos, long form videos that could spur an idea for us to use on the television side. We had it last year. Dan Hurley, he's got some idiosyncrasies. He's a different dude. And it's obviously been highly successful for him in the way that he approaches the game, the way he approaches life. Two-time national champion, defending title for UConn. Well, they did a little thing somewhere on social media that he's superstitious and he would not wear a different pair of underwear if they win. So it would be the same underwear that his wife would wash, and they would use a portable washing apparatus on the road. So we took that. Tracy Wolfson did a little bit more on it. We had some fun with it. This is in the first round in a blowout. They're a 1 seed. And now that's your chance to shine. That's your chance to now dig a little deeper. I didn't go to Syracuse with the idea that one day I'd be breaking down championship undergarments, but you do what you got to do. And that germinated from something on social media that we then took to another level.
That's fabulous. That's you were mentioning before about your upbringing and how much influence that your parents had on you,
Yeah.
and just being able to absorb their preparation and how
Yeah.
they went about their business. And it seems like history has kind of repeated itself with your son Noah.
Yeah.
How, I've seen photos of him being exposed to your
Yeah.
work ethic and your preparation. So obviously you have influenced him as he goes about his amazing rising career. But from a digital perspective, has he had any influence on you in terms of, like, Dad, you need to check this out. Dad, you need to be
Yeah.
on this platform. Has that happened?
Yeah, great question. We definitely prepare in different ways. The core of the preparation is the same. And I think he obviously took a lot from watching me, asking questions through the years. And he always asked very uh, detailed questions about how I did things. So I realized at that point that, okay, he might have a real interest in this and an aptitude for it because it wasn't just the surface stuff. He observed a great deal when we would drive home after a game. And the question to me was, hey, I noticed, I'm talking about when he was 11 or 12. I noticed on the open that you were looking at your partner, not looking at the camera. Was that something that you determined ahead of time that you're not going to look at the camera? I said, well, I try to treat it like we're at a cocktail party. And if 3 people were talking to one another at a cocktail party, let's say it's me, my analyst, and the third person is the camera, I would lock in on the person talking. If I started looking at the person not talking while the person was talking, the person not talking would look at me like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me? He's talking or she's talking. So I put it in those terms to him at a young age, and he fully got it. Now, I acknowledged I'll lock in on the person next to me that's talking, and occasionally I might look at the other person who's not talking to gauge their reaction, to acknowledge that they're a part of this, and then go back to the person that's talking. So I broke it down in the simplest of terms, and I've noticed with him that he's taken it to heart. The preparation part, he is definitely more in tune with the audio side of it, downloading podcasts about the team that he's about to work, coaches' interviews or press conferences, and putting them in a form that he can listen to during downtime while he's working out. First of all, he works out, which I'm not doing a whole lot of. So maybe that's where he's getting the advantage, Dave. But that part, he's an audio learner. I'm more of a visual learner. I'd rather read the transcript than listen to 16 minutes of audio. And that's just a different way of approaching it. For him, that gets into his brain, it seeps in, he doesn't have to jot it down. I'd rather write it down. I'd
Mm,
rather go bullet points on the four things that I took away from it, and then I have my notes ready to go. He views it as, nope, it's in there, and it
mm.
will trigger when something on the court or the field occurs that connects to what I heard 2 days ago on a podcast or in a coach's interview. So that's just a small, slight difference. I understand why he does it that way, and I might end up adopting that in some fashion. But for now, I've stuck with my methodology because it's worked for me for so long.
I'm going to wrap it up with one final question. I had a lot of more questions. We've pretty much covered everything. It's been a great conversation, but
Thanks.
I just want to ask you, can you explain what a Brooklyn wedgie is?
Yes, yes, I can. This is interesting. No one's really asked me ever where the term came from. So I start doing Nets games, and I'm working with Jim Spinarkle and Bill Raftery. And when the ball gets stuck in between the backboard and the rim, and we see it, it's not a common occurrence, but it does happen. Jim would always say, "Oh, there's a neck ball." And I didn't know what that meant. And then Raf would say neck ball because Jim said it. And finally I asked Jim, I go, what's that from? He said, "Oh, I don't know. In our driveway, when I play hoops with my kids, I always say, if you can get the ball stuck between the backboard and the rim, the game's over. We call it a neck ball, and whoever does it wins." I'm like, okay, that's a nice personal story, but it didn't strike me, at least back then, as something that was going to live and connect with people. So the next time it happened, I beat him to the punch and I said, the ball gets wedged between the backboard and the rim. And then I doubled down. I said, "Jim, that's a wedgie." And now he said, "No, no, 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 no. It's a neck ball." And he went through his whole process. Well, I end up working the game with Bill. They were alternating back then. And the next time it happened with him, again, I went with wedgie. And Raf goes, "Ooh." Yeah, he liked it. All it took was that. And then I had people started to come up to me and say, "Wedgie." And now, Dave, we're of a similar age group. The wedgie back in the day was not something that you wanted to be a part of
Right.
because that meant that someone was taking your underwear. This is the second time we've gotten into underwear. Maybe we need to reassess what's happening. Someone's taking your underwear and pulling it up from the back and stretching the elastic and wedging it. And that was not something you wanted to be a recipient of.
Yeah.
Ironically, I never had one as a kid, but my first year with the Nets, we were on a charter. I remember the day because it was my birthday. It was February 9th, 1995. We were flying back from Atlanta. The Nets had lost to the Hawks. And Rick Mahorn gave me a wedgie
Oh.
as an adult on the Nets charter. I had said something to him, so maybe I deserved it. I don't know. These are things I need to work out maybe with a therapist. But he did give me a wedgie, and that term eventually lived on. So I do think it allows the audience to connect in some way. Laughter is just one of those things that is contagious. And if it's appropriate, you take your shot.
Well, with that, Ian, I want to thank you for joining me today. This has been a really fun conversation. Good luck with the tournament, and of course, if I do hear a wedgie call, I'm going to think about our time today that we had. So
Please.
thank you again, and have a great tournament.
It could be a Tex-Mex wedgie, Dave. It may happen. Keep it keep it low.
I will. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks, I thank
See you,
you.
bud.